Rebecca Martinez felt the transport shuttle shake as it broke through the atmosphere of New Montana. She pressed her hand against her growing belly and looked out the small window at the planet below. The world looked rough and wild, with mountains that reached up like giant teeth and forests that stretched as far as she could see. Rivers cut through the land like silver ribbons, and she could see small patches where other humans had built their homes. The shuttle pilot turned around and spoke to the passengers. "Welcome to New Montana, folks. Temperature outside is 40 degrees and falling fast. The sun sets in about 6 hours, so make sure you get to shelter before dark. The wildlife here gets active at night, and you do not want to meet them without proper protection." Rebecca checked her pack one more time. She had basic tools, some food, warm clothes, and building materials that would help her start a new life. Most of the other passengers carried much more gear and had family members waiting for them at the settlement. Rebecca had nobody waiting, and that was exactly how she wanted it. The shuttle landed with a bump on the flat area that served as the spaceport for the colony. Rebecca watched through the window as other passengers were greeted by friends and family. Children ran to hug their parents, and couples embraced after long separations. The scene made her feel lonely for just a moment, but she pushed that feeling away. She had come here to build something new, and she would do it alone. When her turn came, Rebecca stepped off the shuttle and felt the heavier gravity immediately. New Montana pulled at her body with more force than Earth, and she had to adjust her balance. The air smelled clean and cold, with hints of pine trees and something wild that she could not identify. She took a deep breath and smiled. This felt like freedom. The colony administrator approached her with a clipboard and a concerned look. He was a middle-aged man named Peter, who looked like he had seen too many new arrivals make bad decisions. "Ma'am, I see here that you are planning to build outside the main settlement. Are you sure about that? We have nice homes available right here in town where you would be safe and comfortable." Rebecca shook her head. "I need my own space. I have coordinates picked out about 3 miles from here near a fresh water source. The land survey shows it is unclaimed and suitable for building." Peter looked at her belly and frowned. "Ma'am, with all respect, you are clearly expecting a baby. Most pregnant women wait until after the birth to start major construction projects. The gravity here is heavier than Earth, and the work would be very hard even for experienced builders. Why not stay in town until your baby is born and then think about building your own place? I appreciate the concern, but I know what I am doing. I was a construction engineer on Luna for 8 years. I have built homes in low gravity, high gravity, and no gravity. I understand the challenges, and I am prepared for them." Peter made some notes on his clipboard but still looked worried. "The nearest neighbor to your chosen location is Jake Morrison, who owns the Triple Star Ranch. He is a good man and would help you if needed. But you should know that we lose communication with outlying areas during bad weather. If something goes wrong, you might be on your own for days or even weeks." "That is exactly what I want," Rebecca said firmly. "I came here to prove that humans can build and survive anywhere if they are willing to work hard and think smart. A comfortable house in town would not prove anything." Peter gave up trying to convince her and handed over the land deed and building permits. "Well, ma'am, it is your choice. The supply truck makes runs to outlying areas once a week. You can radio for emergency help, but response time depends on weather and road conditions. Good luck to you." Rebecca loaded her gear into the small electric vehicle that would take her to her land. The driver was a young woman named Lisa, who had been on New Montana for 2 years. As they drove away from the settlement, Lisa pointed out important landmarks. "That mountain there is called Bear Peak because of the creatures that live in the caves. Those dark trees are ironwood, and they make the best building material, but they are very hard to cut. The stream you are heading for has good clean water year-round, but it floods during spring melt, so build well back from the banks." The drive took almost an hour over rough trails that were barely wide enough for the vehicle. Rebecca saw several small cabins and farms along the way. Most had smoke coming from chimneys and looked warm and inviting. Children played in yards while adults worked on various projects. It was clear that humans were adapting well to life on this frontier world. When they reached her chosen location, Rebecca climbed out and surveyed her new home. The stream ran clear and cold about 50 meters away. The ground was mostly level with a gentle slope for drainage. Tall trees provided windbreak and privacy, while still allowing plenty of sunlight. She could see why the survey team had marked this as prime building land. Lisa helped her unload the gear and looked around nervously. "Are you really planning to build a house here by yourself? This seems like a lot of work for one person, especially in your condition." Rebecca smiled and patted her belly. My baby and I will be just fine. We are tougher than we look. She had already started planning the cabin layout in her mind. The foundation would need to go deep to handle the freeze and thaw cycles. The walls would be thick enough to keep out cold and strong enough to resist the powerful winds that swept across the plains. The roof would shed snow and rain while the whole structure would be designed to last for generations. As Lisa drove away, Rebecca stood alone in the wilderness and felt a sense of peace she had not experienced in years. The cities of Earth were crowded and polluted with too many rules and not enough opportunity to really build something lasting. Here on New Montana, she could create exactly what she envisioned without compromise or committee approval. She walked around the property, marking where the corners of her cabin would be. The baby kicked inside her belly as if expressing approval of the plan. What do you think, little one? Ready to help Mama build our new home? The baby kicked again and Rebecca laughed. They were going to do something amazing together on this wild frontier world. Rebecca woke up before dawn in her small tent and felt the baby moving inside her belly. The ground was hard even with her sleeping pad, but she had slept well, knowing she was exactly where she belonged. She could hear the stream running nearby and birds starting to sing in the trees. The air was cold and fresh when she unzipped the tent and stepped outside to begin her first full day of building. She had spent the previous evening studying the land and finalizing her plans. The cabin would be 30 feet long and 20 feet wide with thick walls and a steep roof to shed snow. The foundation needed to go down at least 4 feet to get below the frost line. Most people would hire a crew with heavy equipment to dig that much earth, but Rebecca had other ideas. She started by marking the exact outline with wooden stakes and string. Every measurement had to be perfect because mistakes at this stage would cause problems later. She used a water level to make sure everything was straight and square. The morning sun climbed higher as she worked, and soon she was warm enough to remove her jacket. The digging began with a small folding shovel that would have seemed inadequate to most builders. Rebecca had learned on Luna that the right technique mattered more than the size of the tool. She dug in sections, piling the earth carefully where it would not interfere with later work. The soil was a mix of clay and rock that held together well but required steady effort to break apart. By noon, she had completed one corner of the foundation and was working on the second. Her back ached and her hands were getting sore, but she felt good about the progress. The baby seemed to approve because it had stopped kicking and let her focus on the work. She took a break to eat lunch and drink water while sitting on a fallen log that would eventually become part of her walls. During her break, she noticed movement in the forest. Something large was watching her from behind the trees but staying well hidden. Rebecca had read about the local wildlife and knew that most creatures avoided humans. Still, she made sure her tools were within easy reach and kept working. Whatever was watching would either leave her alone or learn that humans were not easy prey. The afternoon brought visitors of a different kind. 3 figures emerged from the forest, moving with smooth, graceful steps that seemed almost like dancing. Rebecca recognized them immediately from the colony briefings. These were Kalari, the intelligent species that had lived on New Montana long before humans arrived. They were tall and thin with 4 arms and large compound eyes that could see much more than human vision. Their skin looked like polished green metal, and they wore simple clothes made from local plant fibers. The lead Kalari approached slowly with its 4 hands held open to show peaceful intentions. It spoke in careful English that sounded like wind chimes. Human female, we observe your work. You build alone. This is unusual behavior for your species. Rebecca set down her shovel and wiped dirt from her hands. Hello, I am Rebecca. I prefer to work alone because I can control the quality and timeline better. Are you from the local clan? We are the Thornwood clan. I am called Greenleaf by humans, though our true names cannot be spoken with your vocal cords. We have watched many humans build on this world. All use groups and machines. You use only small tools and individual effort. This interests us greatly. The second Kalari stepped forward and examined the foundation hole with obvious curiosity. Your digging technique is efficient. You remove earth in layers and compact the bottom as you progress. Most humans dig randomly and create weak foundations. Did your clan elders teach you this method? Rebecca smiled at being called efficient by aliens who were known for their precise engineering. I learned construction techniques in school and through years of experience. Humans can be very capable workers when we apply ourselves properly. The third Kalari walked around the marked foundation perimeter and made clicking sounds that seemed to indicate approval. The dimensions are suitable for local weather patterns. The positioning takes advantage of natural drainage and wind direction. You have studied our world carefully before beginning this project. I spent 3 months researching New Montana climate and geology before choosing this location. Good planning prevents problems later. Rebecca picked up her shovel again. I need to get back to work while the daylight lasts. You are welcome to watch if you are interested. The Kalari exchanged rapid clicks in their own language before Greenleaf responded. We will observe with your permission. Human construction methods are very different from our own traditions. Perhaps we can learn from each other. Rebecca returned to digging while the 3 aliens watched with obvious fascination. They took turns examining her technique and the quality of her work. Sometimes they would click quietly among themselves, but they did not interfere or offer suggestions. Their presence was actually comforting because she knew they would warn her of any dangerous animals in the area. As the sun began to set, Rebecca had completed half of the foundation excavation. Her arms and back were tired, but she felt satisfied with the progress. The hole was straight and level with solid, undisturbed earth at the bottom. Tomorrow she would finish the digging and begin laying the stone foundation that would support her cabin for decades. The Kalari prepared to leave as darkness approached. Greenleaf approached Rebecca one more time. You work with great determination, human Rebecca. We have built many structures on this world, but always with full clan participation. Individual construction was thought impossible due to the physical demands. You prove that human capabilities exceed our previous assessments. Thank you for the compliment. Humans are stronger and more adaptable than most people realize. We just have to be willing to push beyond what seems comfortable or easy. After the Kalari disappeared into the forest, Rebecca made a simple dinner and sat by her small campfire. The night sounds of New Montana surrounded her tent, but she felt safe and content. Above her, the stars shone brighter than they ever did on Earth, because there were no cities to create light pollution. Some of those stars had planets where other humans were building new homes and proving that their species could thrive anywhere in the galaxy. The baby kicked gently inside her belly as if reminding her that this adventure was about more than just proving a point. She was building a home where her child would grow up strong and free. Every shovel of dirt and every stone in the foundation was an investment in the future. Tomorrow she would continue the work, and each day after that until the cabin was complete. Then she and her baby would have a place that belonged completely to them in this vast, beautiful wilderness. Jake Morrison rode his horse along the eastern boundary of his ranch, checking fence posts and looking for signs of the large predators that sometimes wandered down from the mountains. His property covered almost 10,000 acres of prime grazing land, and keeping track of everything required constant attention. He had been on New Montana for 5 years and built the most successful ranch operation on the planet through hard work and careful planning. As he crested a small hill, Jake noticed something unusual in the distance. Smoke was rising from an area where no buildings should exist according to his maps. The location was on unclaimed land near the stream that formed his eastern boundary. Jake pulled out his binoculars and focused on the source of the smoke. What he saw made him shake his head in disbelief. A woman was working alone at a construction site with what appeared to be the framework of a cabin, already taking shape. She was clearly pregnant but seemed to be handling heavy timbers with no difficulty. Jake watched for several minutes, trying to understand what he was seeing. The woman lifted a log that must have weighed at least 200 pounds and positioned it perfectly on the wall frame. She worked with smooth, efficient movements that showed years of experience. Most ranch hands would struggle to handle that much weight even working as a team. Jake had never seen anything like it. He decided to ride closer and investigate. The woman might need help or medical attention, especially considering her condition. The nearest doctor was back in the main settlement, and emergencies in the wilderness could turn deadly very quickly. As his horse picked its way down the hillside, Jake tried to think of a diplomatic way to offer assistance without seeming insulting. When he reached the construction site, Jake dismounted and called out a greeting. "Good morning, ma'am. I am Jake Morrison from the Triple Star Ranch. I was checking my fence line and noticed your smoke. Thought I should stop by and see if everything is all right." The woman looked up from her work and wiped sweat from her forehead. She was probably in her late 20s with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her clothes were work-worn but clean, and she moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "Good morning. I am Rebecca Martinez and everything is fine, thank you. Just building my new home." Jake looked around the work site with growing amazement. The foundation was perfectly laid with stones fitted so tightly that mortar was almost unnecessary. The wall frames were straight and square with joints cut to precision tolerances. Several completed walls already stood ready for the roof structure. The quality of work was better than most professional contractors could achieve. Ma'am, I do not mean to pry, but this is some impressive construction. Did you have a crew here earlier to help with the heavy work? Rebecca smiled and patted her growing belly. Just me and my little helper here. We have been working on this for 3 weeks now and making good progress. Should have the walls finished in another week or so. Jake stared at her in disbelief. You mean you have been doing all this work by yourself? Those logs must weigh a couple 100 pounds each. How are you managing to move them into position? Leverage and technique mostly. I learned construction methods on Luna, where we had to build habitats with limited equipment and personnel. The principles work just as well here even with the heavier gravity. You just have to think through each step and use physics to your advantage instead of trying to overpower the materials. To demonstrate her point, Rebecca picked up a 16-foot log that Jake estimated weighed at least 150 pounds. She positioned a smaller log as a fulcrum and used a rope system to lever the heavy timber up onto the wall frame. The entire operation took less than 5 minutes and required no more effort than lifting a normal-sized box. That is the most efficient log placement technique I have ever seen, Jake said honestly. Where did you learn to build like this? Luna City University has an excellent engineering program. I specialized in habitat construction for extreme environments. After graduation, I worked on several major projects, including the new residential districts and the industrial complex expansion. When I decided to start over somewhere new, I figured New Montana would be a good place to put my skills to practical use. Jake examined the cabin, construction more carefully, and realized he was looking at truly professional quality work. The foundation was engineered to handle freeze-thaw cycles and seismic activity. The wall construction would provide excellent insulation while resisting high winds. The overall design showed deep understanding of local climate and building requirements. Ma'am, I have to say this is the finest cabin construction I have seen on New Montana. Most people throw up something quick and cheap that barely survives the first winter. You are building something that will last for generations. Mind if I ask why you decided to do this alone instead of hiring a crew? Rebecca secured the log she had just positioned and turned to face Jake directly. I came here to prove something to myself and to show that humans are capable of much more than most people believe. Hiring a crew would make the work easier, but it would not prove the point I am trying to make. Every timber I cut and every stone I place is evidence that individual human determination can overcome any challenge. What about medical concerns? You are clearly expecting a baby, and this kind of physical work could be risky. The nearest doctor is 3 hours away by vehicle, assuming the roads are passable. I have medical training from my Luna work where emergencies were common and help was often days away. I monitor my health carefully and know the warning signs to watch for. The baby is developing normally and seems to enjoy the activity, judging by how much it kicks during work hours. Jake shook his head in amazement. In 5 years on New Montana, he had seen many tough pioneers, but nothing like this. Most pregnant women stayed close to medical facilities and avoided heavy labor. Rebecca was doing work that challenged experienced construction crews while maintaining the health of herself and her unborn child. Well, ma'am, I have to tip my hat to you. This is the most impressive individual effort I have witnessed on this planet. If you need anything at all, please do not hesitate to ask. My ranch is just over that hill and I check this area regularly. You have my radio frequency if emergencies arise. Thank you for the offer, Jake. I appreciate having good neighbors even if I prefer to work independently. How long have you been on New Montana? 5 years now. Came out with the third wave of colonists and claimed this land when it was still completely wild. Built the ranch from nothing with help from some good friends and a lot of hard work. It has been challenging but very rewarding. What made you choose ranching over other occupations? Grew up on a cattle ranch back on Earth in Montana. Always loved working with animals and living close to the land. When the opportunity came to start fresh on a new world, I jumped at the chance. This planet reminds me of old Earth before all the cities and pollution changed everything. Rebecca nodded in understanding. That is part of why I came here too. Earth feels too crowded and regulated. Here we can build exactly what we envision without bureaucrats and committees interfering with every decision. Jake climbed back on his horse and prepared to continue his fence inspection. Ma'am, it has been a real pleasure meeting you. I will spread the word that you are out here so other folks know to check on you occasionally. Take care of yourself and that baby. As Jake rode away, he kept looking back at Rebecca and her amazing cabin. He had never met anyone quite like her, and suspected that her story would become legendary among the colonists. She represented everything that was best about human determination and ingenuity. Whatever challenges New Montana threw at its inhabitants, Rebecca Martinez would find a way to overcome them through skill and sheer force of will. Jake could not stop thinking about Rebecca Martinez and her incredible cabin project. That evening at his ranch house, he pulled up the colonial database on his computer and searched for information about her background. What he found made her achievements even more impressive than he had realized. Rebecca had been the lead engineer on 3 major habitat projects in Luna City, including the famous Crystal Dome complex that housed 50,000 people. She had designed and supervised construction of emergency shelters that saved hundreds of lives during the solar storm crisis of 2387. Her innovative techniques for building in low gravity had been adopted throughout the solar system, and she held patents on several construction methods that were considered breakthroughs. In the field, the database showed that she had voluntarily resigned from her position as senior habitat engineer and requested transfer to New Montana as a general colonist. Her application listed no family members and no previous connections to frontier settlements. She had given up one of the most prestigious engineering positions in human space to start over alone on a wilderness planet. Jake printed out her file and read through her qualifications again. This woman had designed structures that housed millions of people and managed construction crews of thousands. Now she was building a single cabin with hand tools while 7 months pregnant. It seemed impossible that someone would make such a dramatic change in their life circumstances. The next morning, Jake drove his truck to the Colonial Administration office in the main settlement. He wanted to discuss Rebecca with the officials who handled newcomer orientation and support services. The administrator, Peter, was surprised to see him since Jake rarely came to town except for supply runs. "Jake, what brings you to the office today? Having problems with your livestock permits or land boundaries?" "Nothing like that, Peter. I wanted to talk to you about Rebecca Martinez, who is building a cabin out near my eastern boundary. Have you been monitoring her situation?" Peter pulled up Rebecca's file on his computer and frowned. "That woman has me worried sick, Jake. She insisted on building alone despite being pregnant and refuses all offers of assistance. I tried to convince her to stay in town until after the baby is born, but she would not listen to reason." "Are you telling me she actually started construction already?" "Started and made amazing progress. Peter, you need to see what she has accomplished out there. This is not some amateur throwing together a shack. She is building a professional quality structure that will withstand anything this planet can produce. The workmanship is better than most of our municipal buildings. Jake, I appreciate that you want to be supportive, but construction work is dangerous for pregnant women, especially in our heavier gravity. If something goes wrong, she could lose the baby or worse. We have responsibility for colonists' safety and cannot just ignore risky behavior." Jake leaned forward in his chair. "Peter, did you actually read her background file? This woman designed the Crystal Dome complex on Luna. She has more construction experience than everyone in this settlement combined. If anyone can handle building alone, it would be Rebecca Martinez." Peter scrolled through the file data and his expression changed to surprise. "I knew she listed construction experience, but I did not realize the scope of her background. These are some very impressive projects she worked on. Still, that does not change the medical risks of heavy labor during pregnancy. What if I told you she is using innovative techniques that eliminate most of the heavy lifting? I watched her position a 200-pound log using leverage and rope systems. The physical effort was no more than moving furniture. She has thought through every aspect of this project and solved the problems that would stop other people. That is interesting, but we still have liability concerns. If she gets injured or has complications during childbirth, we could face serious legal problems with the colonial authority. Insurance companies do not like settlers who take unnecessary risks." Jake stood up and paced around the small office. "Peter, what if her methods could help other colonists build better homes more efficiently? Instead of worrying about liability, we should be studying her techniques and sharing them with newcomers. This could revolutionize how we approach construction on frontier worlds." Before Peter could respond, his computer chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as Kalari Diplomatic Mission, and the subject line read, "Request for Human Construction Consultation." Peter opened the message and read it with growing amazement. "Jake, you are not going to believe this. The Kalari want to meet with Rebecca Martinez specifically. They are requesting formal discussions about human individual construction capabilities. This is the first time they have ever asked to consult with a specific colonist about technical matters. What exactly are they asking for? Peter read from the message. They want to observe her construction methods and discuss how individual humans can accomplish tasks that require group effort among their species. They are particularly interested in her adaptation techniques for working in heavier gravity while maintaining pregnancy. This is being treated as a significant cultural and technical exchange opportunity. Jake sat back down with a grin. So the aliens recognize her abilities even if our own administrators are worried about liability issues. Maybe that should tell us something about who is really thinking clearly. Here, this changes everything, Jake. If the Kalari are interested in Rebecca's work, then we need to support her project instead of trying to discourage it. Positive relations with the indigenous species are crucial for long-term colonial success. We cannot afford to interfere with something they consider important. Peter sent a reply to the Kalari message agreeing to facilitate the requested consultation. He also made notes in Rebecca's file updating her status from high-risk individual to special diplomatic resource. The Colonial Council would need to be briefed about this development at their next meeting. Jake, I want you to maintain regular contact with Rebecca and report any significant developments. If the Kalari are watching her work, then we need to make sure she has whatever support she requires. This could be the beginning of important technological exchanges between our species. Jake agreed to serve as unofficial liaison and headed back to his ranch. On the way, he stopped at the general store and bought supplies that might be useful for Rebecca's project. Quality tools, medical supplies, and high-energy foods would help ensure her success without interfering with her independence. That afternoon, Jake rode back to Rebecca's construction site and found her installing roof beams with the same efficient techniques he had observed before. The cabin walls were now complete and the structure was beginning to look like a real home. Several Kalari observers sat quietly in the nearby trees watching every detail of her work process. Rebecca, I have some interesting news from town. The Kalari have formally requested to consult with you about your construction methods. This is apparently the first time they have ever asked to work directly with an individual human colonist. Rebecca paused in her work and looked toward the alien observers. That is quite an honor. I noticed they have been watching more frequently over the past few days. Their own construction techniques must be very different from human methods if individual work seems so unusual to them. The colonial administrator wants to support your project in any way possible. He realizes now that what you are doing could have important implications for human-Kalari relations. Is there anything you need that might help you finish the cabin? I could use some metal roofing materials if they are available. The wooden shingles I plan to make would work, but metal would last longer and shed snow more effectively. Other than that, I have everything under control. Jake made a mental note to arrange delivery of roofing materials from the Colonial Supply Depot. Rebecca, I think you are going to be famous throughout the colony before this project is finished. People are starting to realize that you are accomplishing something truly remarkable out here. Rebecca smiled and returned to her work. Fame was never the goal, Jake. I just wanted to prove that humans can adapt and thrive anywhere if we are willing to work hard and think creatively. If that helps improve relations with the Kalari, then so much the better for everyone. The weather monitoring station in the main settlement began broadcasting urgent warnings 3 days before the storm was expected to hit New Montana. Meteorologist Dr. Helen Carter had been tracking the massive weather system as it formed over the northern ocean, and she did not like what the data was showing her. This is going to be the worst storm we have seen since colonization began, she announced during the emergency briefing for colonial officials. Wind speeds are projected to exceed 200 kilometers per hour, with temperature drops of at least 30 degrees. The storm will last for at least 18 hours and could bring up to 2 meters of snow in the higher elevations. Peter, the colonial administrator, looked at the weather maps with growing concern. What are our recommendations for outlying residents? Should we order mandatory evacuation to the main shelters? Anyone living in temporary structures or older buildings should definitely evacuate. The main settlement buildings are rated for extreme weather, but many of the individual cabins and farms have not been tested under these conditions. We could see significant structural damage or complete building failures. Peter immediately thought of Rebecca Martinez and her unfinished cabin. Even if her construction was as good as Jake claimed, it had never been tested by severe weather. A pregnant woman caught in a failing building during a major storm could face life-threatening danger. Dr. Carter, what would be the latest safe time for evacuations from the eastern districts? Tomorrow afternoon at the latest. Once the storm winds reach 100 kilometers per hour, travel will become impossible. Anyone not already in shelter at that point will have to ride out the storm wherever they are. Peter contacted Jake Morrison by radio and explained the weather situation. Jake, we need to get Rebecca Martinez evacuated to town immediately. Her cabin is not finished, and even if it were, we cannot risk having a pregnant woman isolated during a storm of this magnitude. Jake was already preparing his own ranch for the approaching weather, but he agreed to ride out and talk to Rebecca. I will head over there this afternoon and explain the situation. If she agrees to evacuate, I can transport her to town in my truck before the roads become impassable. Jake, make it clear that this is not optional. We have authority to order emergency evacuations when colonist safety is at risk. I do not want to use that authority, but I will if necessary. Jake saddled his horse and rode toward Rebecca's construction site under increasingly cloudy skies. The wind was already picking up, and he could smell the approaching storm in the air. Wild animals were moving to shelter, and even the normally active Kalari had disappeared from the forest. When he reached the cabin, Jake was amazed to see that Rebecca had made dramatic progress since his last visit. The roof was now complete with metal sheeting that gleamed in the gray light. The walls had been chinked with mortar and the windows were installed and sealed. The structure looked solid and weatherproof. Rebecca was working on final details around the foundation, building up drainage channels and securing loose materials that might blow around in high winds. She moved with calm efficiency, as if preparing for routine maintenance rather than the worst storm in colonial history. Rebecca, I have urgent news from the weather station. A major storm is approaching that could have winds over 200 kilometers per hour. The colonial administration is ordering evacuation of all outlying residents to the main shelters. We need to get you to town before the roads become unsafe. Rebecca looked up from her work and studied the darkening sky. How much time do we have before the worst weather hits? Dr. Carter says anyone not in shelter by tomorrow evening will be trapped wherever they are. We should leave this afternoon to be safe. The truck is fueled and ready, and I have space prepared at my ranch house if you prefer not to go all the way to town. Jake, I appreciate the concern, but this cabin is designed to handle anything this planet can produce. I studied 3 years of weather data before finalizing the construction plans. The foundation goes below frost line, the walls are engineered for high wind loads, and the roof is designed to shed snow and ice without structural stress. Jake examined the cabin more carefully and had to admit it looked incredibly solid. The construction was far superior to his own ranch buildings and even most of the structures in the main settlement. Still, the approaching storm was unprecedented, and no building on New Montana had been tested under such extreme conditions. Rebecca, even if your cabin can handle the storm, what about medical concerns? If you go into labor during the emergency, there would be no way to get help. The nearest doctor is hours away, even in good weather, and the roads will be completely blocked. The baby is not due for 6 weeks, and I have medical training from my Luna work. I can handle routine complications if they arise, and the storm will only last a day or two at most. The risk of traveling in deteriorating weather conditions is greater than staying here in a properly built shelter. Jake tried a different approach. What about supplies? Do you have enough food, water, and heating fuel to last through an extended emergency? The supply trucks will not be able to reach outlying areas for at least a week after the storm passes. Rebecca smiled and led him inside the completed cabin. The interior was warm and comfortable, with a stone fireplace providing heat and several oil lamps giving light. Shelves along the walls held canned goods, medical supplies, and other necessities. A hand pump connected to the nearby stream provided fresh water, and a wood-burning stove was ready for cooking. I have food for 3 weeks, medical supplies for basic emergencies, and enough heating fuel to last a month. The fireplace and wood stove can burn local deadfall if needed. The cabin is completely self-sufficient for extended periods. Jake walked around the interior, checking the construction details. The walls were thick and solid with excellent insulation. The windows were double-paned and well-sealed. The roof showed no signs of stress or movement, even with the increasing wind outside. The overall design was clearly the work of a professional engineer who understood extreme weather challenges. Rebecca, this is impressive construction, but you are betting your life. and your baby's life that it will perform as designed. Are you really willing to take that risk when safe shelter is available in town? Jake, this cabin represents everything I know about building structures to survive in hostile environments. If it fails, then I failed as an engineer and everything I learned on Luna was worthless. I have more confidence in this building than I do in anything else on New Montana, including the municipal structures. What can I do to help you prepare? If you are determined to stay here, then we should make sure you have everything you might need. The cabin is ready, Jake. All I need now is for the storm to prove that human engineering and determination can overcome any challenge nature presents. This will be the final test of whether I accomplished what I came here to do. Jake shook his head, but recognized that Rebecca had made her decision based on careful planning and professional expertise. All right, but I want you to monitor the emergency radio channel constantly. If anything goes wrong or you change your mind about evacuation, send a signal immediately. I will find a way to reach you regardless of weather conditions. As Jake prepared to leave, Rebecca handed him a sealed envelope. If something does happen to me, please make sure this gets to the Colonial Archives. It contains all my construction plans and techniques, so other colonists can benefit from what I learned here. Jake took the envelope and promised to deliver it safely. As he rode away through the strengthening wind, he looked back one more time at Rebecca's cabin. It stood solid and confident against the darkening sky like a fortress preparing for siege. Either it would vindicate her faith in human engineering or it would become her tomb. The storm hit New Montana with fury that exceeded even the worst predictions. Dr. Carter watched her instruments register wind speeds of 230 kilometers per hour before the weather station's anemometer was torn away by the howling gale. Snow fell so heavily that visibility dropped to 0, and the temperature plummeted to -40 degrees. In the main settlement, emergency shelters overflowed with evacuated colonists, who huddled together sharing food and warmth. The municipal buildings groaned and creaked under the assault, but their reinforced construction held firm. Outside the safe zones, several smaller structures collapsed, under the combined weight of snow and wind pressure. Jake Morrison secured his ranch house and waited out the storm while monitoring emergency radio channels. His building shook violently, but the thick stone walls and steel roof held against the battering winds. Every few hours he tried to contact Rebecca on her radio frequency, but received only static in response. The storm was interfering with all communications, and he had no way to know if she was safe. At Rebecca's cabin, the first sign of the approaching storm was a sudden drop in air pressure that made her ears pop. The baby kicked restlessly inside her belly as if sensing the coming danger. Rebecca checked her supplies one final time and added extra wood to the fireplace. Outside, the wind began to moan through the trees with an ominous sound that grew steadily louder. When the full force of the storm arrived, it struck the cabin like a giant fist trying to crush everything in its path. Wind screamed around the corners and hammered against the walls with impacts that shook the entire structure. Snow driven by the hurricane-force winds struck the windows like machine gun fire, creating a constant rattling that echoed through the interior. Rebecca sat calmly in her chair by the fireplace, monitoring the cabin's response to the assault. Every joint and beam had been calculated to handle extreme loads, but this was the first real test of her engineering. The walls flexed slightly under the wind pressure but remained solid. The roof shed snow and ice as designed without accumulating dangerous weight. The worst part of the storm lasted 14 hours with winds that never dropped below 150 kilometers per hour. Rebecca dozed fitfully in her chair, waking each time a particularly strong gust hit the cabin. The baby seemed to sleep peacefully through the chaos, as if protected by its mother's calm confidence in their shelter. Around midnight, the cabin's radio crackled to life with an emergency broadcast from the main settlement. All outlying residents, please respond with status reports. We have multiple building failures and are coordinating rescue operations for trapped colonists. Rebecca keyed her microphone and responded clearly. This is Rebecca Martinez at coordinate 774x228. Cabin is secure and occupants are safe. No assistance required. The radio operator sounded surprised to receive any response from that area. Rebecca, please confirm your status. We show you are in a high-risk zone that was ordered evacuated yesterday. Are you certain you do not require rescue? Confirmed safe and secure. Building is performing exactly as designed with no structural stress or damage. I will monitor this channel for further updates. Similar calls came from other isolated colonists throughout the night, but several locations failed to respond at all. Rebecca said prayers for those people while tending her fire and waiting for dawn. The storm was proving that New Montana was still a dangerous frontier world where survival depended on preparation and good engineering. Morning, the winds had decreased to 70 kilometers per hour and the snow had stopped falling. Rebecca opened her door cautiously and looked outside at a transformed landscape. Drifts reached almost to her windows and fallen trees blocked the path to the stream. The forest looked like a war zone with broken branches and uprooted stumps scattered everywhere. Most remarkably, the cabin showed no signs of damage despite the incredible battering it had endured. The roof was clear of snow, the walls were straight and solid, and not a single window had cracked. Rebecca's engineering had proved itself against the worst weather New Montana could produce. She spent the morning digging out her doorway and clearing paths to essential areas around the cabin. The physical work felt good after being confined indoors, and the baby seemed to enjoy the activity. By noon, she had restored access to her woodpile and water source. The first visitors arrived that afternoon when Jake Morrison appeared on horseback, looking exhausted and worried. He had spent hours fighting through snowdrifts and fallen trees to reach her location. When he saw the undamaged cabin and Rebecca working calmly outside, he stopped his horse and stared in amazement. "Rebecca, I cannot believe what I am seeing. Your cabin looks like the storm never happened while buildings all over the territory suffered major damage. 3 structures in the main settlement lost their roofs and 2 houses collapsed completely. The engineering was sound, Jake. I calculated loads for weather far worse than what we experienced. The foundation, walls, and roof all performed exactly as planned." Jake dismounted and examined the cabin construction with new respect. "The Colonial Council is going to want a full report on your building methods. If we can construct all our buildings to these standards, we will never have to worry about storm damage." Again, before Rebecca could respond, they heard the distinctive clicking sounds that announced the arrival of Kalari visitors. 3 aliens emerged from the forest, moving carefully through the snowdrifts. Their large compound eyes scanned the undamaged cabin with obvious interest and approval. The lead Kalari approached and spoke in its musical English. "Human Rebecca, we observed your structure throughout the storm. No movement, no damage, no failure of any components. This exceeds our understanding of individual construction capabilities. Your small clan has achieved what our largest building groups struggled to accomplish. Thank you for the compliment. Human engineering principles work well when properly applied to local conditions. We request formal consultation about your methods. Our traditional techniques require many workers and extensive support systems. If individual humans can build structures of this quality, then perhaps our species should reconsider our own approaches to construction." Jake listened to this exchange with growing excitement. Rebecca had not only survived the worst storm in colonial history, but had impressed the indigenous aliens with her engineering abilities. This could be the beginning of important technological exchanges that would benefit both species. "Rebecca, I think you have started something much bigger than just building your own home. The whole colony is going to want to learn from what you accomplished here." Rebecca patted her belly and smiled. "The baby and I are just glad to have a warm, safe place to live. If our home can help other people build better, then that makes everything worthwhile." The storm had tested Rebecca's engineering and her determination. Both had proven stronger than the worst weather New Montana could send against them. Now she faced a new challenge as people throughout the colony sought to learn from her example and apply her methods to their own construction projects. News of Rebecca's incredible storm survival spread throughout the New Montana colony within days of the weather emergency ending. The Colonial Council called an emergency session to discuss the implications of her engineering achievement and determine how her methods could benefit the entire settlement program. Dr. Helen Carter presented a detailed analysis of the storm damage assessment to the assembled officials. "We had 17 major structural failures, including 3 buildings in the main settlement that were supposed to meet our highest construction standards. Total repair costs will exceed 2 million credits, and some families have lost everything they brought to New Montana." Peter, the colonial administrator, looked grim as he reviewed the damage reports. "What about outlying areas? How many casualties did we have among residents who refused evacuation orders?" "That is the remarkable part, Peter. We had only 1 resident who stayed in an outlying area during the storm, and she emerged completely unharmed. Rebecca Martinez and her cabin suffered absolutely no damage, despite being directly exposed to the worst conditions. Her building techniques appear to be far superior to our current construction standards. Council member Dr. Richards raised his hand to speak. Are we certain about these reports? It seems impossible that a single pregnant woman could build a structure more resilient than our professionally designed municipal buildings. Jake Morrison had been invited to address the council about his observations of Rebecca's work. Council members, I have personally inspected her cabin multiple times throughout the construction process. The quality of workmanship exceeds anything I have seen in 30 years of frontier building. Her engineering background includes major habitat projects on Luna, where structural failure means death for thousands of people. The council reviewed Rebecca's personnel file with growing amazement. Her qualifications included advanced degrees in structural engineering and material science plus years of practical experience designing buildings for the most extreme environments in human space. She held patents on several construction techniques that were standard throughout the solar system. Why would someone with these credentials come to a frontier world to build a single cabin? Asked Councilmember Sarah Kim. According to her application, she wanted to prove that individual human determination could overcome any challenge. She specifically requested assignment to unclaimed wilderness land where she could work alone without interference or assistance. Dr. Carter pulled up architectural diagrams on the main display screen. I have analyzed her construction methods based on Jake's observations and photographs taken during the storm. Her foundation design distributes loads more effectively than our standard techniques. Her wall construction provides better insulation while using less material. Her roof system actually channels wind to reduce pressure, rather than simply resisting it. The Kalari diplomatic mission had also requested to address the Colonial Council about Rebecca's achievement. Their representative Greenleaf was granted permission to speak through the translation system that allowed real-time communication between the species. Human leaders, we have observed construction efforts by your species for 5 years since colonization began. All previous building has required group effort and mechanical assistance. Individual Rebecca accomplished alone what we believed impossible for single beings of any species. This demonstrates capabilities that exceed our previous understanding of human potential. Council Chairman Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward with interest. Are you saying that Rebecca's methods could be useful for your own construction projects? Our traditional building requires coordination of many clan members over extended time periods. Individual work was considered impossible due to physical limitations. If humans can achieve quality construction alone, then perhaps our species should investigate similar approaches. We request formal consultation to study these techniques. Peter realized they were dealing with something much more significant than a single impressive building project. This could be the beginning of important technological exchanges between our species. Rebecca has not only solved construction challenges for human colonists, but opened new possibilities for Kalari development as well. The Council voted unanimously to invite Rebecca to share her methods with the entire colony through formal training programs and documentation projects. They also authorized her to serve as official liaison for construction-related discussions with the Kalari delegation. 3 weeks after the storm, Rebecca went into labor during a calm, sunny morning. She had prepared thoroughly for home birth with medical supplies and communication equipment ready for emergencies. Jake Morrison arrived within an hour of receiving her radio call and assisted with the delivery using his veterinary experience from ranch work. Baby Maya Martinez was born healthy and strong in the cabin her mother had built with her own hands. The first sounds she heard were wind in the trees and water running in the nearby stream. Her first sight was sunlight streaming through windows that had withstood the worst storm in colonial history. The Kalari delegation arrived the next day with traditional gifts for the new baby. They presented Maya with a crystal pendant that symbolized strength passed from one generation to the next. In their culture, such gifts were reserved for children born to great builders and engineers. Human Rebecca, your offspring begins life in a structure that proves individual determination can overcome any obstacle. This will influence her development in ways that cannot be measured, but will certainly be beneficial. Rebecca held her daughter while sitting in the rocking chair Jake had carved as a baby gift. Maya will grow up knowing that humans can accomplish anything they set their minds to. That knowledge will serve her well as she faces her own challenges in life. The colonial administration officially designated Rebecca's cabin as a historical landmark and educational site. Engineering students would visit to study her techniques, while Kalari observers would continue learning about human individual construction methods. Her achievement had become a symbol of what humans could accomplish through determination and skill. Jake expanded his ranch operation to include a lumber mill that produced building materials, according to Rebecca's specifications. Demand for her construction techniques grew rapidly as colonists sought to build homes that could withstand New Montana's harsh weather. Her methods were being adopted throughout the frontier territories where reliable construction meant survival. Rebecca, what you started here is changing how humans approach building projects throughout this sector of space. Your influence extends far beyond New Montana now. Rebecca smiled and adjusted Maya's blanket against the cool evening air. I just wanted to build a safe home for my baby. If that helps other families build better homes, then Maya and I have contributed something valuable to human expansion among the stars. The baby gurgled contentedly in her mother's arms while the lights of other cabins twinkled in the distance. Each of those homes had been built using techniques pioneered by Rebecca during her solitary construction project. Her determination to prove human capability had created a legacy that would benefit generations of frontier families. Evening stars appeared in the clear sky above New Montana as Rebecca carried Maya inside their warm, secure cabin. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight, they were safe in the home that had been built with love, skill, and absolute confidence in human potential. 6 months after Maya's birth, Rebecca stood on her front porch watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink. Her daughter slept peacefully in a carrier on her chest, while Rebecca reviewed construction plans that had arrived by message drone from 3 different star systems. Word of her building techniques had spread far beyond New Montana, and requests for consultation were coming from frontier worlds throughout human space. Jake Morrison rode up the familiar path carrying supplies and news from the main settlement. His weekly visits had become a cherished routine that provided Rebecca with contact to the wider colony, while respecting her preference for independence. Maya always smiled when she heard his horse approaching, and Rebecca suspected her daughter was developing a special fondness for their regular visitor. Morning, Rebecca. I brought those specialty tools you requested, plus some interesting news from the communication center. The Kepler Colonial Authority wants to commission you to write an official manual on frontier construction techniques. They're offering enough credits to fund your research for 5 years, plus patent royalties for any innovations you develop. Rebecca adjusted Maya's carrier and accepted the message tablet Jake handed her. That is generous, but I am not interested in getting back into corporate engineering. My goal was to prove that humans can build anything they need using individual effort and basic tools. Turning that into a business venture would defeat the purpose. What about the training requests? I counted 12 different colonies asking for you to visit and teach your methods to their construction teams. Some of those worlds are facing serious housing shortages that your techniques could solve. I am willing to share knowledge freely, but not to travel as a paid consultant. Maya needs stability during her early years, and this cabin is our home now. Anyone who wants to learn my methods can come here, and I will teach them everything I know. Jake understood Rebecca's position, even if he thought she was missing significant opportunities. The Kalari have made their own request. They want to establish a permanent cultural exchange center here, where their young builders can study human individual construction methods. In return, they would teach human engineers their traditional clan building techniques that create structures lasting for centuries. This proposal interested Rebecca much more than the commercial offers. Cultural exchange could benefit both species in ways that go beyond construction techniques. The Kalari approach to long-term planning could help humans build more sustainable communities, while our individual methods could give them flexibility they currently lack. Maya stirred in her carrier and opened dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with unusual focus. At 6 months old, she was already showing signs of the intelligence and determination that had driven her mother to such remarkable achievements. Rebecca suspected Maya would face her own unique challenges as she grew up in this frontier environment. Jake, what do you think about the cultural exchange proposal? Your ranch would be the closest human settlement to any Kalari facility built here. I think it could be the beginning of something important for both species. The Kalari have knowledge about this planet that could help us adapt better, while our techniques could help them undertake projects they currently consider impossible. Maya would grow up learning from both cultures, which could give her perspectives that no other human child has experienced. That afternoon, the Kalari delegation arrived for their scheduled consultation session. Rebecca had been working with them weekly to document and analyze the differences between human and Kalari construction approaches. The aliens were fascinated by her ability to visualize complex structural relationships without extensive group discussion and planning. Greenleaf examined the latest cabin. Rebecca had designed for a young couple who wanted to build near the stream. Human Rebecca, this structure incorporates elements from both our species' methods. The foundation uses our deep anchoring techniques, while the wall construction follows your individual building approach. This synthesis could create buildings superior to either method alone. That is the goal, Greenleaf. Neither species has perfect solutions to all construction challenges, but together we might develop techniques that work better than anything either of us could create. Separately, the younger Kalari named Brightbark, who served as the delegation's technical specialist, had been studying Rebecca's mathematical calculations. Your structural analysis methods allow rapid evaluation of multiple design options without physical testing. Our traditional approach requires building scale models and testing them under controlled conditions. Your mathematical modeling could accelerate our design process significantly. Rebecca showed them her latest innovation, which was a portable design system that could analyze local materials and environmental conditions to generate optimal building plans for any location. This system incorporates both human individual techniques and Kalari long-term durability concepts. A single person could use it to design structures that would last for generations while requiring only basic tools for construction. The implications excited the Kalari delegates, who saw possibilities for projects that had been considered impossible under their traditional methods. Small groups or even individuals could undertake construction that previously required full clan participation. This could revolutionize their approach to territorial expansion and resource utilization. Human Rebecca, if you are willing to share this system with our species, we would like to establish the Cultural Exchange Center immediately. Our young builders need to learn these concepts while they are still flexible enough to adopt new approaches. I will share everything freely with the understanding that both species benefit from the knowledge exchange. Maya will grow up learning from both human and Kalari teachers, which should give her a unique perspective on construction and engineering. Jake helped Rebecca prepare dinner while Maya played with the colorful toys the Kalari had brought as gifts. The scene felt peaceful and domestic, despite representing the beginning of unprecedented cooperation between two intelligent species. Rebecca's determination to build a cabin alone had somehow created opportunities that could influence the development of multiple worlds. Rebecca, when you first arrived here, did you imagine that your cabin project would lead to all this? I knew I wanted to prove something about human capabilities, but I never expected to start a cultural exchange program or influence construction methods throughout the frontier territories. Sometimes individual actions have consequences that reach much farther than anyone could predict. As evening approached, Rebecca carried Maya outside to watch the sunset from their favorite spot on the porch. The mountains glowed with reflected light while stars began appearing in the darkening sky. Some of those stars had planets where humans were building homes using techniques pioneered right here in this remote cabin. Maya reached toward the stars with tiny hands as if trying to grasp the lights that sparkled above them. Rebecca wondered what challenges her daughter would face as she grew up in a galaxy where humans were still proving their ability to thrive in any environment. Whatever obstacles appeared, Maya would have the example of a mother who refused to accept limitations and the support of two species working together toward common goals. The cabin stood, solid and secure behind them, representing everything Rebecca had hoped to achieve when she first stepped off the transport shuttle onto New Montana. She had built more than a home for herself and her daughter. She had built a foundation for human expansion among the stars and a bridge between species that could lead to beneficial cooperation for generations to come. Tomorrow would bring new students eager to learn construction techniques that could change their lives and new challenges that would test human adaptability once again. Rebecca looked forward to meeting those challenges with the same determination that had driven her to build a cabin with her bare hands while pregnant on an alien world. The galaxy was vast and full of opportunities for those willing to work hard and refuse to accept the word impossible.